Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to another enlightening episode of I Am Dad podcast. Today we are thrilled to have Elisabeth Schellekens, the visionary founder of Elle's Corner. She's going to join us today. Elisabeth is a passionate motherhood and mental health counselor dedicated to revolutionizing the way we approach postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and mental health of maternal situations as a whole. Drawing from her own personal journey with a difficult pregnancy and severe postpartum depression, Elisabeth has created a supportive community and powerful resources that help mothers build resilience and thrive. As an advocate for dismantling the taboos around mental health, she is leading the charge to make mental health care as accessible and routine as a dental checkup, starting as early as high school. Today, we explore Elisabeth's journey, her groundbreaking work with Elle's Corner, and her mission to ensure no mother feels alone in her postpartum expression or her experience. Please join us in welcoming the inspiring Elisabeth to the I Am Dad podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Kenneth. Thank you so much for having me on. That was a very wonderful introduction. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. I've done a lot of listening to your podcast and to your, into your conversation, and I get it. And we're going to talk today about how much I get it. I'm sure when I heard from you and I was thinking about, I was like, all right, okay, what does this got to do with fatherhood? And then I started thinking about my own journey, and I was like, this has everything to do with fatherhood. I was
Yeah.
like, yes, I got to have her on so we can kind of talk about this. And so let's do that today. We start our podcast off with something really very specific to the I Am Dad community, and it sets and gives our audience a look into your past in the way that we look towards the subject matter. And it is simply this: you could tell it in whatever manner you want to tell it in. Your story is your story. Tell us your daddy's story.
Okay, so I think you're a dad of 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I became a mom dad in 2022. I was pregnant for most of 2021, and I got to do this wonderful, incredible journey with my partner, my husband, my daughter's dad, and just seeing him with our little miracle, our little daughter, is, to be honest, one of the greatest joys of my life. And he's a girl dad because we have a daughter. And I vividly remember the ultrasound where, we discovered if it was going to be a boy or a girl. And I knew I had like a little preference for a boy. I think most men do in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember us looking at the echo, right? Like the ultrasound, and we were like, oh, I see like 2 little blobs, 2 little balls, and like a thing in between. And then my husband, he told me, he was like, okay, that's a boy, right? That's a boy. And so the wonderful ultrasound lady, she told me, definitely a girl, 1000%. I've never seen it that clear. And in that moment, I saw my husband becoming a dad, and that was just priceless. It was wonderful.
Incredible. We love that piece of the story because we know statistically that in our research that 97% of dads we survey, and that I know I haven't met one yet that thinks otherwise. So I'm not sure why it's not 100% that says that the day of the birth of their children is the best days of their lives. And so it's a really kind of interesting dynamic when you hear that, and then the story goes, right? And it goes a lot of different ways for a lot of different families. And that is something that we're always trying to explore. Talk to me a little bit about your inspiration for Elle's Corner. I know that you had a difficult pregnancy that kind of led you to first thinking about yourself and getting yourself right, and then seeing the value in taking your own story and allowing others to hear that with the hopes that it would inspire them.
Yeah, so me and my husband, we were very ready to have kids. We just got married. We had so much love. There was so much more space for us to give love to a little one. So he said, let's become parents, as one
Mhm.
does. We thought we were so prepared and we did everything we could, but obviously we were not prepared at all.
Mhm.
And I got pregnant really fast, which was great. But then I got HG, which is morning sickness, but like super severe morning sickness. So I
Mhm.
ended up spending 9 months super, super sick in bed. I lost 20 pounds in the first trimester. I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. Even water made me super nauseous. I had to go to the bathroom with the help of my husband, and it was just mentally extremely difficult as well as physically, of course.
Mhm.
And then my daughter was born, and I was just so happy not to be pregnant anymore. And my husband, he was such a dad. He took everything upon him. He changed nappies for 2 full weeks while I was recovering in the bed. And he was like, I think like 2 days after the hospital, we got home, and he said, "Oh, honey, let's have another one." So he
What
was
was your response to that?
I was like, no, 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 no. And I remember, yeah, I just remember that so vividly because he, like 1 week before the birth, he had this big ass freak out where he was, oh my God, I'm going to have a baby in a week. Oh my God, oh my God. And he just lost it. And I told him it's going to be fine. But yeah, so he was incredibly happy. He had that, that he was walking on clouds. He basically had what I thought I would have after my daughter was born. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, that wasn't my experience. When my daughter was 8 weeks old, I went from doing, kind of okay, tired newborn parent to completely suicidal in one afternoon. I remember thinking, okay, this is not how it's supposed to feel like. This is I just wanted everything to stop. It was really rough. I knew something was very, very wrong mentally, mental health speaking, but knowing about it and really experiencing it is a very different thing.
Mhm. How did you get to the point that you were able to articulate that? Because I'm sure you wasn't exactly sure how to talk to your husband about it. Like, what got you to the point to being able to explain what you thought you were going through?
Yeah, so most moms, I don't know if you went through this with your kids and your wife, but most moms they suffer from this thing called the baby blues about 3 to 5 days postpartum, where they cry quite a bit. They're very emotional. It's just all of the hormones like leveling out from being pregnant to not being pregnant to breastfeeding, and it's very normal to be, yeah, very emotional and mental health speaking, not great, but it's supposed to only last for a maximum amount of 2 weeks. And this sort of just was my baseline, I feel. And I had a lot of crying. My husband just thought it was normal because he thought, okay, she has this baby and she's not sleeping. And so, yeah, I was already a coach and a counselor and a mental health expert. Had my own practice, so I've been seeing a lot of people with anxiety and also depression. So I did sort of feel that was the case with me, but I thought, oh no, I've already had so much miserableness in this pregnancy and with this baby, and this is not me. I'm just tired. I'm just gonna enjoy it, and then it's gonna be fine. And then I remember around that 8-week period, I remember talking about things regarding my daughter and things that were going to happen in the future. So, for instance, things like her character, how I wanted her to be fed, how what like kind of temperament she had, all those things, and then all these things like these scenarios I was talking to my husband and also to my parents because they're also very involved in our lives. Um, there I wasn't in that perspective. I wasn't in that vision of the future I was talking about. I was sort of explaining to the people around me what to do with my daughter if I was no longer there. And at one point I
Wow.
remember vividly like just that realization hitting me, and I was like, Oh, shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here, but
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
remember I was like, okay, this is really bad. This is not good. And then I looked at my mom, and I looked at my husband, and I said, okay, I think I'm in real trouble here.
Mhm. What was his response to that? Did he I know a lot of times when we're talking about husband and wives, men and women, you guys are always like, "I just want you to listen. I don't want you to fix anything. Just be quiet. I'll try to fix it." Did that
Exactly.
was
Oh
that
God.
different for that point? Was that different, or did you really need him to listen, or were you really asking him, "This is the one time I need you to do more than listen?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that you say that because that's such a theme or for men and
Mm.
women and wife and husband. I needed him to take action because I was beyond the point of being able to take action myself. And I remember him looking me very much in the eye, and I remember that he looked at me and he said, "Okay, let's go. We're gonna fix this. Let's take it one step at a time. I'm here for you. We got this, honey." And as shitty as I felt then, that felt really good. I felt very shameful about, talking about it because it's still a big taboo, right? Suicidal thoughts and being very unhappy and depressed when you just had a baby. But I felt very understood and supported in that husband and wife relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of nuances, and it's one of the things that I do in the work that I do around fatherhood. It allows me to kind of take a 50,000-foot look and really kind of understand dynamics and what's going on. And oftentimes, what I've learned is that people don't know how to articulate those nuances in the moment. And the nuance that I'm thinking about here is that typically, when that kind of happens, and I am thinking about now, the mothers of my children and the times to which we were pregnant together and trying to really understand this is that for the most part and in general, you guys' minds are in, I need to take care of the baby. Like you need to take care of yourself. I ain't got time to take care of you. I'm trying to take care of the baby. But when it's flipped and you're going through what you're doing, our minds are in, I need to take care of the baby, but I gotta take care of you too. Like, and there's a challenge between how much energy and effort I put into taking care of you as my wife or partner and the child, and that's exhausting
Yeah.
for a man who wasn't expecting that to take place. Did that ever did you ever give thought to like what he was going through? And be honest, because I think men need to hear this with respect to like if you said, I'm not answering the question for you, and I just want to set this up for you. If you said no, I wasn't thinking about him, then that's okay. We just need to know that. Like so when we get in a situation, we know how to handle it. Like what were your
Um,
thoughts?
um, the thoughts were complex, to say the least. Um, I think for me personally, I know this is not the case for all moms because I also see moms who see it differently, but um, I felt very guilty and I felt
Mm,
very scared and like I think for me, I always have struggled with insecurity about myself, about my capabilities, about that's a theme in my life, and that's okay. But I always was like, oh my God, I'm such a wreck. He's gonna leave me. Who wants to be with this kind of person who's so mentally unstable and like, yeah. But then I also, throughout all the therapy I've gotten myself, I am
mhm.
quite articulate in how I express my feelings. So I did talk to him about this. I was like, yeah, it's okay if you want to leave me. I get it. I'm stupid. It's weird. You have a crying wife all the time. And he said,
Wow.
honey, 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 calm down. What would you do if the roles were reversed? And like, I
Mhm.
didn't have to think about it for 1 second. Of course, it would be exactly the same. And that did give me the stability to focus more on my problems. But like the guilt and the shame towards him did take up, like, for a long time, at least 50% of my thoughts.
Wow. Let's walk this through a little bit clinically because I know that, my audience is mixed, but I want to make sure that dads in particular are able to take something from this to kind of understand. Because I know that um, I've been blessed in the sense that the mothers of my children when we were together. My wife, we've only had one child together, and then I have four other children. And so, but just going through the process, don't really remember them going through deep postpartum depression or anxiety. But what I want for everyone to kind of understand is the difference between the two of those. Explain both postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety.
So while they might look a little bit the same, they're very, very different. So I always say you have like three things, right? You have the baby blues, you have postpartum anxiety, and you have postpartum depression. The baby blues almost every mom goes through, and it's mild symptoms of sadness, crying, emotional, and it lasts like a couple of days right after birth, max 2 weeks, right? So that is just a little afterbirth thingy, basically.
Hmm.
And then you have the two other big ones, which are postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. Postpartum anxiety is very much, um, I think, more relatable to people because I would say more people in life generally have an anxiety disorder, right?
Hmm.
So it is exactly what other people, also men, go through. So maybe, as a dad, you can acknowledge that a little bit yourself, how if you've ever felt anxious, just multiply that times 100, and it usually goes out. The symptoms are extreme caring about your baby, so like really super hyper focus on certain things. So for me, that was sleep, naps, baby naps. Some moms have baby feeding. So for instance, my baby eating enough. And like, of course, as a new mom, as a new dad, you're always worried about little things, right? You
Hmm.
always like, you have this little life that you have to keep alive. And but the postpartum anxiety is really different in the sense that it just goes so many steps further. Your anxiety rules your life and prevents you from living a normal new parent life.
Mm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It explains a lot, and so, and it's explains something also in this area, and that is the fact that you were a new mom, right? Because we make the assumption that dads got to learn how to be parents, moms know how to be parents, and that's absolutely not true. Like, how were you able to find support in the areas in terms of asking people for help that people would assume you should already know? You shouldn't be asking these questions. Why don't you know that?
I That is a very good question. It's a very relevant as well. I'm a researcher. I make lists. I research things like, so I knew how to get pregnant. Obviously, everybody knows how to get pregnant, but like I took my
Check.
folic check. No, I took my folic acid 3 months in advance. I really like thought about my diet. I stopped drinking alcohol. My husband too. Like we took all these like things that you have to do to get pregnant. And during pregnancy, there's also so much thought that goes into the birth, right? The pregnancy and the birth are very big things. So healthy pregnancy is very important, a good birth. So we took breathing classes, and I knew all about the pain medication, and I knew about the birth, the pushing, the active labor, the non-active, everything I knew. And that felt like such a momentous important thing, but actually that was like a blimp on the
Mhm.
radar of having a baby. When you get your driver's license, you have to take lessons, you have to pass an exam, you have to study for your theory exam. But with a baby, they just give you one, right?
Right.
Or you make your own. But yeah. So for me, the two big things were baby sleep. I just assume babies are tired, babies sleep. Apparently, that is not the case. Sleep is a skill that a baby has to learn. And so,
Mhm.
what you see a lot of moms get, just, mom burnout or even depressions or anxiety because their baby just doesn't sleep. There's a lot of crying going on, things like that. So, I think there is a real gap in the knowledge over there. And also about the feeding, bottle, breast, and uh, everyone has an opinion. So when people ask
Mm.
me, like, what is your advice to someone who's pregnant or a new mom or a new dad, just any new family? One, do not take advice from anyone. you are the mom, you are the dad, and that's the most important thing for your baby. You're the best mom or dad for your baby. And
Hmm.
two, buy a shower glove. I know this sounds weird, but baby baths are also kind of complicated, at least in my opinion. So when you have this newborn, you have to bathe it from time to time. They poop their pants all the time, you know. So and you have to put them in this bath, and it's awkward with your hands. And then my husband's much taller than I am, and we had this bath, and it just didn't work. So someone gifted us this really long sleeved bath thing, and you could
Hmm.
just hold your baby in the shower, and it made a world of difference. It was great. So those are my two tips for people who ask me for tips.
Something as small as that. Also, I'm interested in knowing, your parents, like when you had to lean on them for support. I really like to hear your thoughts around what were the kinds of things you leaned in on hearing from your mom, and what were the kind of things you leaned in terms of hearing from your dad.
Yeah, I remember my husband going back to work for the first time, and on Sunday night, I called my mom crying, and I said, "Mommy, can you please come over tomorrow because my husband has to go to work, and I don't want to be alone with this new baby." And then she said, "Yes, of course, honey. I'm an only child, so she only has me as a daughter, as a child." And she was just there to keep me company, and she did a lot of the cooking with for me and helping, and also just the mental reassurance that there was someone there. That was my mom. It was great. And my dad, he was also great, but it's very different. So my parents are definitely boomers, I would say. They're about 65 now. So they definitely have this boomer generational thing going on for them. Again, I was their only child, so they only have a reference for me. But my
Mhm.
dad showed his that he cared in very different ways. He helped me hang the baby monitor, for instance, the camera. You know,
Mm.
like typical dad toolbox things, right? And I know that he loves me very, very much. But it's I think that generation, especially the men there, at least for in my family, I think they show their love and their compassion and their empathy more by doing deeds. And
Mm.
he would just go around the house closing curtains at night. It's a very small thing, but it's a thing that made me feel very cared for. And
Mhm.
that feeling cared for, like, we got you, that
Mhm.
that made me feel really good. I do remember on the mental health aspect of things, my with my parents, my husband, yeah, we everyone knew what was going on with me. I had the label postpartum depression. It was all very clear, and but I think the generation my parents are in are less talkative about mental health, and there was much more of a
Mhm.
taboo on mental
Mhm.
health in there. And there's some generational trauma, of course, from their parents who went through a war, things like that. um, but I remember my dad asking my husband, "Oh yeah, Elizabeth, she's not doing so well, right? She's not feeling so good." And then my
Mhm.
husband said it straight up. He was, "No, no, she's suicidal. She's feeling absolutely not good. She's not. She's doing horrible." And my dad
Right.
just said there. He was like, "Oh, oh yeah, and yeah." I know that that was maybe a bit hard for him to hear that. And obviously,
Mhm.
when your kid goes through something, I'm sure you can imagine that that's the worst thing. The only thing you want to do is help. And I'm sure that they wanted that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the world could be so contradictory sometimes, particularly when you're in this age now of, women empowerment and equity and all those kinds of things. But it's something about parenting that level sets that conversation.
Yeah.
Where, to your point about your mom and dad, yeah, mama's gonna hug and kiss, and especially for girls, like that's a different. You guys have a different dynamic. Me and my son was talking about this the other day, like the dynamic between him and him and his mother. And I was talking to my daughter the other day about the dynamics between girls and their moms and boys and their sons, and we were joking about, like, the one thing I've yet to understand is, like, how do you guys talk 5 times a day and have something to talk about every time you talk? Like, I don't understand that. That just boggles my mind. Like, my son, I get him on the phone, it's like pulling teeth for either of us to get any words out. We're trying to understand what that is. But when you say he shows up and he does the small things, like, that's just who we are in nature. Like, tell me what you want me to do, and if you don't tell me
I'll
what
do it.
you want me to do, Imma do what I'm comfortable to do, and so I'm
Yeah,
gonna go around and I'm gonna make sure that all the light bulbs are working, and I'm gonna
exactly.
fix things, right? I'm gonna fix things. I need a project. Even in our work, when we work with dads, one of the things that we always say is, like, particularly when it comes to incentives, I'm like, "Dads need a project." Like, don't expect for them to walk in and just know what
Share
to do.
emotions. Yeah.
Right. No.
No, but that's so true because I remember, when like, okay, so I was very, very sick, very suicidal. Like, for the people listening, I'm great now. I'm loving my life. I'm having like an absolute ball of a time here. But I remember when I was going through it, and like I was still very, very fragile, and like it was going a little bit better. I was on antidepressant, I was on sleep medication. So like there was slight improvement, but for me, my postpartum depression meant that I really held on to my kid. Like, I couldn't even go to the bathroom without being
Right,
like, "Is she
right.
okay?" And I remember, so my dad is really handy, right? And I think I like to think that I inherited that skill from him.
Mhm.
So when I started feeling a little bit better, we just started doing shit around the house. So we would we would like um I have my little toolbox and I have my little hammer and he has his big toolbox, and we just go around the house and we would fix things. So for
Right.
instance, like behind me, there's like I
Boy
rebuilt
Scout.
this wall. We did this, and
Okay.
yeah, that was also very healing for me. To take a
Mhm.
page of my dad's playbook for I need a project to feel better. I don't want to talk about my emotions all the time. Let's just do something and do something together. And I do have to say that did help just as much as my mom cooking dinner
Mhm.
for us.
Yeah, because there was a couple of times, and I remember, like, really doing things that I thought were when I look back on it, it's like, "Man, bro, you was, like, kinda nuts at that point for no reason whatsoever." I remember we were bringing our daughter home, this is with my youngest daughter's mom, and we were pulling up in front of the house, and there was a cone, and I had to get out of the car and move the cone, and she got in to park the car. And when she got in to park the car, she hit the curb. And I remember losing it. Like, "What are you doing? Like, you're gonna kill her." Like, my mind went like, "Dude, it's a curb." Like, everybody runs into the curb coming front end. It doesn't flip the car over. You don't like, people inside don't get hurt, all of those kinds of things. And now when I look at it, I was like, "Wow, that was that hyperactivity in, like, that over parental
Mm.
aura around you that was so sensitive about everything."
And maybe
And it
something that was already, a little bit on the edge by sleep deprivation or things like that.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then the second thing was more comical. And we were in the house and we were doing something, and she was breastfeeding at the time, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the store." And my mind was like, "Wait, what?" Not in a controlling way, like, "You can't go to the store." This was what was in my mind, Elizabeth. "You can't take the food supply away from my daughter. You can't."
You're taking the food. No, what am I supposed to do if I don't have any food? You're the fridge and the microwave and everything. I totally get that. Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just, so when you look at, like, that's what I believe is so beautiful about A, marriage, but B, couples who are committed to each other and are with each other. You get to ride that journey together. And as crazy and as fearful as it might be, it is
Do it
still a
together.
journey. And then you get to come away however many years later and sit on a podcast like you and I and roll on the floor laughing at some of the crazy things that we did. But the serious part of what took place with you is where I want to go now, and that is up front where you're looking at what's happening to you as something that is attached to the birth of your child. Now you have to separate that a little bit by now saying mental health and that it is actually something going on with me. that I have to deal with. And to your point about your dad not wanting to talk about that, that's a whole different conversation. And you talk about breaking the myth and the stigma around saying mental health. Talk about that transition.
I think I always believe in things for a reason, and I'm very kind of a floaty person, I would say. So I'm not happy that I had postpartum depression and that like everything happened to me, but I do think it happened for a reason. I think it happened for a specific reason because I am who I am, my character is who I am, and I am a very honest and open and direct person, I would say. So I sometimes sort of feel that I had to go through what I went through to be able to break through what so many women go through and get it out in the open. You know, sometimes the truth will out, and it's that sounds very dramatic, but um, there's this thing, this stigma, indeed, this taboo that is just so deeply rooted in our community and in our lives and in our world, and I vehemently disagree with that.
Yeah.
I and I think as someone who went through it myself, I'm also a very big advocate for it. And when I started sharing my story with other people, every single person I talked through, even older people, they had either gone through it themselves or they knew someone in their very close circle that had gone through it. So that just proves to me that sort of the work that I'm doing, and I know I sound very uh, world improver kind of type, but I do believe that is necessary to become better people who live more empathically together. And I think that empathy and that recognition and acknowledgement is something we severely need in today's society.
Mm. So before I go on to the next piece of this, I do want to ask, because I didn't ask you this question. What's your husband's name?
Thomas.
Thomas. Okay. I hate saying husband all the time. He does have a name, guys.
He
His
does.
name
He
is
does.
Thomas.
It's a
And
beautiful
so
name.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Elizabeth did ask Thomas, just so you know, she said, "Do you want me to bring my husband on too?" And I said no. And so let me tell you why I said no. Because I
Okay.
wanted the audience to hear Elizabeth's story first. I wanted to hear it from her perspective. Once they have heard that perspective, then I want to layer his story over top of it so that there's a better understanding as opposed to us going back and forth
Yeah.
describing a moment. And so I wanted to strip it a little bit. So you will be hearing from me at some point to come back and do part two of this conversation
I love
with him.
that.
Now, what I am
Yeah.
thinking about is having him and not you to see what
Yeah,
that
that's
looks like.
great.
And
I
then
would love
having the
that.
two of you probably come back and doing a third part where the both of you are on and doing. I think that would be really great for people to hear. I'm going
I
to
think
think
so
about
too.
that, but we are going to come back and do part two, or at least part 2 and 3. But you talked about your experience and you talking about everything happening for a reason. I'm the same kind of person. I'm spiritual and Christian in that manner. I don't believe that anything happens for no reason, that everything happens for a reason, good or bad. And it took
Yeah.
me a long time to get to that, right? Because I used to always believe that all things good for the purpose of them who serve him, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, all things good and bad, all things, because the bad things have a way of being great blessings in our lives. May not feel like it when it's happening, but if you come out of the other side and do what you're doing, you begin to kind of understand why you went through what you went through, because there are others out there that are in need of hearing your story and having your understanding to get through what they're going through, because they may not have the same support and inspiration that you had to get through. Product, L's Corner. How did you and what was the process of you getting from understanding what you were going through to now I want to make sure that others understand this as well?
Yeah, so I had my own private practice in coaching and counseling already before I got pregnant, where I was, yeah, I think it was at least 60-70% women and the rest men. I was doing relationship therapy, but also just single, like solo sessions. Um, I obviously had to stop that when I was so sick. But when I started to get better, like a little bit, light at the end of the tunnel situation, I told myself, when, not if, when you get through this, Elisabeth, you're gonna make sure that you're gonna make it your life's mission. Again, I'm very world improver
Mhm,
there.
mhm,
You're going to make sure that no other mom or family has to go what you went through alone, without support, without acknowledgement, without resources. Because I personally cannot prevent moms and families going through a postpartum depression or anxiety, but I can offer help and information. And yeah, especially acknowledgement is a very big part. So that's
mhm,
how Elle's Corner was born. Elle is the name of my daughter, our daughter,
mhm,
and so I named it after her. And
mhm,
what I did is I'm a big journaler, so I took of all of the journals that I had during pregnancy, all the thoughts that I had during my postpartum period, and getting better through that. And I combined that with my I'm a sociologist
mhm,
from college, and I took a lot of psychology classes as well. And I combined those things with my own experience and what I
mhm,
had already learned in support groups, things like that. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'm gonna make an online course for moms
mhm,
that they can follow at their own pace, and if they want, they can have counseling support on the side from me, and they can take that course, and then they get everything they need that I and other moms needed when I was going through my postpartum depression to get better.
mhm,
It's combined with experience, science, um, and then I think the power in it lies that it's e-health. So it's accessible for anyone with internet and a computer. And for those moms who are Googling in the middle of the night, oh, will it ever get better? Will I ever sleep again? It's for them. It's for husbands, dads who are Googling, when do I get my wife back? When will she start feeling better? I want my body for life back. It's for those dads that they know where to send their wives, their partners, to help them get better. And I also sometimes get couples doing the courses together, and that is just great because that's what it's for, to help moms feel better and be better at their own family. Not You don't have to be perfect,
mhm,
obviously, because that's very important, but you have to like what you're doing, because most of the time moms and dads become parents because there's love. There is
mhm,
so much love going on in between them that they want to share that with a little human being. And
mhm,
you're supposed to feel that love and feel that joy, and you're not supposed to feel sad and depressed and suicidal. That is not what motherhood and parenthood should be about, and that's what I
mhm.
try to teach through my courses.
Yeah, most people that are coming through any challenge or adversity, when seeking help, they're looking for what I believe is a tipping point, and they're looking for how do I get from here to there. You
Yeah.
described it as the light at the end of the tunnel. I describe it as the light bulb coming on. For you, was that a moment? Was it somebody saying something to you? What was the occurrence that allowed you to open your eyes and see that light and like, there it is. I'm good now. I now have hope with getting closer to it, or was that enough? Describe what that was for you.
It was finding my place in this new chapter of my life, that instead of the enormous regrets that I was feeling, into hope and looking forward to the next day. So for me, it started really feeling good again when I started to go to bed and thinking, oh, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow morning because I have such a fun day planned with
Mm,
my daughter and with my husband.
mhm,
And, you know,
mhm.
that was for me the tipping point, I think. Like, yeah, that just felt so great because for such a long time I would go to bed and I would hope I wouldn't wake up.
Yeah, really good friend of mine who had a long journey with substance abuse. I asked him a similar question, and still the answer that floors me today. And that's why I ask the question so often, because I do think that people are looking for that thing, right? They're looking for that one thing. And his response to me in talking about substance abuse, I'm like, what was the thing that turned the light on for you? He says, the moment was when I began to want to live more than I wanted to die. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow. Like it's hard to describe that moment, but you can touch it if someone asks you about it. You can't explain it, but
Yeah.
you can't explain what tipped the point or flipped the light on, but you can tell at that moment that this is, and I think that most people, many people, not most, but many people are afraid that that moment will never happen. And I
Yeah.
think that is where the work is, right? That is making sure that support systems are in place to take journeys with people. And I'm sure that you have had people come into your space that you are now on journeys with, you were on journeys with, and you will be on journeys with. When you think about those journeys, talk about one that really inspired you.
Um, I have a mom that came to me recently, and we've been doing walking sessions outside because she's just too anxious to just sit still for 45 minutes.
Mhm.
And she like depression is a different kind of nasty beastie, right? It's
Mhm.
a dark thing. And it's not, you break your leg, you get an operation, you fix it, you get physical therapy, it's done.
Mhm.
It's not when you are depressed. And this mom, she also told me, I don't remember what it feels like to be happy anymore. I know that I was before, but I don't know who that person was, and I don't know how that feeling felt.
Mhm.
And I felt that so hard to my core because that's exactly how I felt as well.
Mhm.
And the hopelessness of that thought that it will never ever get better. I think it very much helps. The mom also told me, so I do. I don't
Mhm.
like that she's going through this, but I like that that was the case. She said it helps so much to know that you walk the same path and that you're on the other side of it now, because that's also what I told her. I know that right now you cannot feel that way anymore or even like begin to describe it. But I promise you that if you stick with it, if you stick with yourself, you will get to that point. And she
Mhm.
and I saw the light bulb come on in that session, that she felt it. She saw, okay, one foot in front of the other. I'm gonna keep going. And I even saw her face, like her, because we were walking in the forest.
Mhm.
I saw her face picking up, like, let's go forward, let's move. And that was very
Mhm.
special.
Nice. You're deep in the work. I've heard you say in this few minutes that we were together that you're a researcher, sociologist, psychologist, world fixer. I've heard you say that as well. In the work itself, what frustrates you the most about what people don't know about what you're trying to accomplish?
How common it is,
Mm,
um, how earth shattering it is to become a mother. And I'm pretty sure it's the same as for becoming a father. But I do also think that there's some biological things happening with your hormones. Women are literally wired, evolutionary speaking, to keep their child alive. And so sometimes it feels like you're a slave to your body,
mm,
and that feels very difficult. And now in this modern day, it's hard to exist. Sometimes it's hard for people to earn their living, their to pay their mortgage, to pay their rent, to pay their groceries. And those people also obviously all deserve to become parents and moms if they want to be. But if we keep going the way we're going, there's no space for moms, and also I think in some extent to dads and to marriages to keep existing and thriving in that. And that frustrates me, that we're living in such a hard, harsh world that is not possible.
What keeps you getting up every morning? Because I know sometimes it's hard to get up. You're happy to get up, but sometimes it could be hard to get up knowing that you have to play the role that you're playing. I often tell people, I use this kind of superhero analogy when I'm talking to, fathers, but this works in general as well. That even superheroes need affirmation. There's a reason that Spider-Man is called amazing. Don't we all think that Spider-Man is amazing? And don't we think that Spider-Man knows he's amazing? Yes, he probably does, but there's some mornings that he gets up and he doesn't feel so amazing. And someone has to call him amazing to give him the motivation to show up in the world the way that people expect him to show up in the world. Like for you, what is that thing that continues to say to Elisabeth, you are amazing even when you don't feel like it?
Is that I get to be, it's twofold. It's that I get to be a mom to this tiny little human who's the cutest, the most stubborn, the most brave little thing alive. And the fact that I know that when I roll over to start my day, my husband is there and we will do this day together and we will parent together. And he's an amazing dad, but first and foremost, he's my husband. And if I can't get up for myself, I sure as hell can get up for him.
Nice. 5 years from now, where's Elle's Corner going to be? You're going to scale up? You're going to be doing similar intimate work, or you want something
I don't
grander?
know. I struggle with that. I think my ultimate goal would be to open sort of like a women's center where there is attention for women from young ages, puberty through menopause, through elderly women, everything more geared specifically towards women. So no more research is only done on white men. Things like that. I have a center with a psychiatrist, a general practitioner, especially for women, all the things women health related. Obviously, men and dads are also welcome in that space because we do it together. But this will be specifically tailored by women for women.
Nice. Tell people where they can get in touch with you, learn more about who you are and the work that you're doing, as well as how to support you.
Oh God. Yeah, so you can definitely take a look at my website. That's ellscorner.com. I think it's linked probably in the profile of this podcast. I actually recently started a YouTube channel and a Substack emailing list where I post a little bit more long form content. So you really get to know who I am and what I do, and I'm always available for a DM, short chat. I love to hear from other moms, even dads. I want to know what you're thinking, what you need, because I want to provide what you need.
Nice. To my I Am Dad podcast listeners, Elisabeth Schellekens.
Yes.
Did I get it right that time?
Schellekens, but yeah.
Schellekens. Okay. I've been working at that in my head. And the reason that I think I got closer is there's a game that we used to play in New York City and Brooklyn particularly, and it was called Skelly.
Yeah, that's indeed the intonation of it. That's true.
Right. And I said, it's got to be close to that. It might not be on point, but it's got to be close. I figure if I say it that way, I'll get closer to
Definitely.
saying it. But thank you so much. I appreciate you and your work. We will be back on again. Tell Thomas congratulations as well, that he is also amazing. I'm inspired, and I haven't even met him yet. And I'm sure
He's great.
that
He's amazing.
We can
He's
inspire
the
others.
amazing Thomas.
The amazing Thomas. That's what I'm gonna have to introduce him. That the amazing amazing Thomas. Yes, let's bring him on that way next time we have him. So that we can have this conversation and anything we can do from Fathers Incorporated and I Am Dad podcast to help you in moving this conversation forward. Maybe there were some areas that we didn't really touch on that we can come back and dig a little deeper in so that folks can, I think, educating fathers is just as important as educating moms, because oftentimes when fathers are in support of moms, they can be the primary information source oftentimes. And bringing things in. And so I lean on that a lot. And to all of my I Am Dad podcast listeners, thank you so much for listening again. You know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And as my good friend and mentor, Art Mitchell, used to always say to me, it's nice to be important, but you know what? It's much more important to be nice. Until next Sunday, God bless and peace out.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am dad, period.